Hello, and thank you for attending tonight's University Boulevard Bus Lane Pilot Virtual Public Meeting. It is March the 30th, 2023. It is approximately 6 p.m. My name is Gary Ehrenrich, and I'm Special Assistant to the Director of Montgomery County Department of Transportation. With me tonight is Keith Riniker, who is the traffic engineer from our consultant team, Mead and Hunt, and Lori Main, who is the managing our Zoom tonight. Lori will be discussing how to participate in the Zoom meeting in a minute. I will give the elected officials present the opportunity to introduce themselves. You may put your name in the chat. That may be the easiest way tonight. Let's move on to the agenda. So the agenda for tonight's meeting is to provide project information and introduction of what a dedicated bus lane is and what it would look like on University Boulevard. To review the pilot plan and details, to review and discuss the range of project benefits, the schedule and the next steps, and how people can get involved in this project. Next slide, please. Thank you. We're going to go over some basics and on how basic controls for the Zoom meeting tonight. Please send questions via the chat to Lori Main, M-A-I-N. She's in the chat. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our website after the meeting concludes. If you do not wish to have your voice or likeness recorded, please keep your camera off and do not unmute yourself. Lori will take you through the Zoom meeting tonight. Thank you, Lori.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, let's see. All right, so everybody has been muted this evening. You cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during the question and answer session and comment period following the presentation. To request to speak, you'll need to use the raised hand function. You can raise your hand by clicking on the reactions icon, which is at the bottom of your screen, and then clicking raise hand. If you have dialed in via telephone this evening, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute yourself. Your video is also turned off by default this evening. To reduce the bandwidth of our meeting, we ask that you please do not turn your video camera on. And now I give it back to Gary. Gary?
Yes, thank you. Let's go over some project background. Thank you. And the purpose of the meeting. So our meeting goal tonight is to provide an overview of the dedicated bus lane pilot project for the University Boulevard and to go over some concept plans to better understand the workings of a dedicated bus lane and to summarize the schedule. Please take some time this evening or at your convenience to complete the project survey that has a QR code at the end of tonight's meeting. Okay, some project background. Thank you. MCDOT, in cooperation with Maryland Department of Transportation, State Highway Administration, and WMATA, are advancing a dedicated bus lane project for University Boulevard. This is a short-term but important improvement to improve bus operations and transit rider experiences within the existing curbs along University Boulevard. The Planning Department Master Plan for the University Boulevard corridor is also going on at about the same time. It is a long-term plan for University Boulevard and vicinity, perhaps 20 to 40 years in the future. The long-term cross-section of the University Boulevard will be developed by the Planning Department's corridor plan. Again, we are only looking at improvements between the curbs on University Boulevard. The MDOT State Highway Pilot Bike Lane Project contributed to this project plan from the bike lane experience and the traffic and operational analysis of the traffic impacts. So we have learned from the previous experience and the input that's been provided both to the planning department as part of their corridor study and to MDOT State Highway Administration. And we have heard, I guess I just said that. So next slide, please. Project implementation. Wait 1 second. The proposed dedicated bus lane pilot limits are from Amherst to Dennis, approximately 2.1 miles in length. Is shown on the screen. I know it's really hard to read, but starts, as I said, in Amherst and goes to Dennis. The bus lane would be the outside curb line in both directions and would be a 24-hour-a-day operation. The dedicated bus lane provides a connection to both the Wheaton Metro Rail Station directly on the Red Line and also to the Silver Spring Station after the Wheaton Station. Many local and regional buses are at these stations, and transfers are important and should be convenient. Metrobus operates a bus line called C2, C4. It is a regional bus route, and Ride-On operates on portions of the University Boulevard segment with ride-ons Route 7, 8, and 9. Next slide, please. Please look at the graphic on the right. The graphic on the right shows the red paint bus lane that can be used by bicycles, emergency vehicles that are allowed in the bike lane. So a dedicated bus lane is a lane that is previously was for traffic, a traffic lane along the curb that is now for buses, bicycles, emergency vehicles, and any vehicle turning right at an intersection or at a driveway. So the bus lane does not prevent anybody from accessing property or cross streets. These dedicated lanes offer a safer biking experience because there will be less traffic in the lane. Buses can pass a vehicle blocking the bus lane, but bus drivers are discouraged from leaving the bus lane. Bicycles in Maryland have the right to travel in all of the lanes on the road, but encouraging bikes to use the curb lane should improve bicycle safety as well. Why University Boulevard? Slide 10. University Boulevard, 1 second. There's some text coming in here. Okay. University Boulevard has the highest Metro bus ridership in Maryland, and one of the highest ridership routes in the DC region, with approximately 7,000 daily riders for the period during the COVID period between September and December of 2022. Still, those are very, very high numbers and have come back quite well from pre-COVID conditions. Many of these 7,000 daily riders will see reliability improvements and reduce congestion in the 2.1 now dedicated bus line segment. Metrobus is experiencing these C2, C4 route is experiencing a 19.2% congestion delay in this segment as measured by Metrobus. And the dedicated bus lane should reduce this congestion delay significantly. So that is one of the goals, definitely one of the goals of the project. Trip reliability is another very important goal to a transit rider. The rider needs to know when the bus will arrive and that the schedule should be consistent with day to day, so with little variation, so as to avoid missing a bus or extending wait times waiting for another bus to arrive. Riders of the C2, C4 are experiencing an average of 35% in bus travel time throughout the day due to congestion. So what that means is that there's such a large variation in travel time in this segment, in this corridor, that on any one day, the arrival of buses can vary significantly. In this case, we're talking 35%. So if you're expecting a bus, you could see significant delays. Removing congestion by using the bus lane will improve bus reliability significantly, even if it's only in a 2-mile segment of a much longer route. Next slide, please. Ride-on routes also will see similar benefits as the Metro Bus C2, C4. Ride-on route number 9 is the major route along University Boulevard, and I think many of you take that route. Ride-on route 9 averages, again, 1,530 daily ridership and has a low or poor on-time performance record of 78%. This is below the system average. So on-time performance, as calculated by Ride-on, is usually a bus coming with 2 minutes before and I think 5 minutes after the scheduled time. So we're talking that only 78% of the time will a bus fit into that 2 minutes early, 5 minutes late period of time. The Route 7 is a peak hour only bus between Amherst and Inwood, and the Route 8 operates between Amherst and Gable Avenue. Their benefit to those routes would be less significant. This next slide shows the University Boulevard, as I said, is a 2.1-mile segment that includes 3 lanes of traffic in each direction. In a typical peak hour of traffic, there are about 1,000 cars in 3 lanes. And look at the left picture on the slide. And there are approximately 15 buses per direction per peak hour. Under the pilot lane program, two lanes out of the 3 will be for cars and regular traffic. 1 lane will be for buses, bicycles, emergency vehicles, and right-turning vehicles going to driveways and cross streets. And that is looked at on the right picture on the slide, where you see the 2 lanes for cars and a red paint lane, which is for buses, bikes, emergency vehicles, and right-turning lanes. The bus lane, as we said, will carry about 15 buses an hour, which is approximately 500 riders in that peak hour. As we said in the earlier, you can see on the slide, on the pilot, 2 lanes would be for 500 cars. So there's an equitable distribution of cars and bus riders, approximately 500 cars per lane and 500 riders in the curb lane during the peak hour. Cars may experience some delay. We're not saying there won't be any impact to cars. And we will measure this. We'll monitor it. We'll look at it as part of the pilot. Bus riders should see a decrease in travel time with moving the buses from the traffic lanes. I'm turning over the presentation to Keith Rineker to go over the pilot concept plans. Take it away, Keith.
Hey, thanks, Gary. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Rineker. The next couple of photos I'm going to show you are artist renderings of what University Boulevard, Maryland Route 193 might look like after the project is constructed. So the photo you see here is a sketch looking westbound towards Georgia Avenue. That's Maryland Route 97, Georgia Avenue, from the middle of the intersection at Arcola. So the changes you're going to notice in this picture here are to the right lane, the curb lane, the bus only lane. They're going to be new for everybody. And so my goal here is to inform everyone about the new traffic control devices that are going to be constructed, so everybody knows how to drive on the roadway, walk, and bike on the roadway, both safely and efficiently. So the bus only lane may be used by cyclists. And this, of course, is no change to what happens now. Cyclists are allowed to use the right side curb lane. You also notice that the curb lane is colored red, and that's our preferred treatment for the curb lane. And that is to enhance the conspicuity of the lane. In other words, we want it to stand out. So we want everyone to know that the bus lane is only to be used by transit vehicles. There's a lot of benefits for buses to having their own lane and to have it stand out so that we have compliance from vehicles that are not supposed to be in there. Now, for those of you who remember that the bike only lane project, that pilot project that was over a year ago, you notice that there's none of those plastic flexible posts that are separating the regular car travel lanes from the bus lane. The other thing you're going to notice in the picture next to the right side traffic signal is that there's going to be a sign over the bus lane to let vehicles know that that's a bus only lane. And Laura, you can go to the next slide. Now, the next picture here is a bird's eye view of the same intersection at Arcola. And I want to point out a couple changes that are here that are going to be a great benefit and improvement over the bike only lane project. So as Gary mentioned, on Arcola, we're going to retain all 3 lanes, the existing 2 left turn lanes and the 1 right only lane. So that's going to accommodate the heavy traffic from Arcola. There is going to be one key difference, and that is that right turning drivers from Arcola, that's the top of your picture, to the left of your picture, will have a merge no yield condition. In other words, right now you can come around that turn at 15, 20 miles an hour and get right onto University Boulevard. Under the future conditions, you won't be able to do that. You'll have to yield. So what drivers will do is they'll see some large yield signs, let them know that there's a new traffic pattern. For the first week or so before this changes, we'll have some digital signs to let drivers know that there's a new traffic pattern. You're going to come to the yield sign. You can look for a safe gap, not only in the bus lane, but also in the vehicle lanes. And then you're going to cross over that red area, and then you're going to enter the vehicle travel lanes. You're not supposed to be driving in that red bus only lane area. The red color pavement is also significant here. You notice there's some white symbols, and they're going to be symbols that say bus only. And then also there's going to be some bicyclist symbols to let everyone know that cyclists are allowed to use that lane. And then on the side of the road, you're going to see there's some signs. They're going to say right lane, buses, bikes only, all times. And Laura, you can go to the next slide. So here's the last picture I want to show you. And this is a sketch looking westbound, again, towards Georgia Avenue, 197, before you get to Northwood High School. And you're looking at the right side curb lane, you'll notice that that red is a broken pattern. And that's to indicate that right turning vehicles are allowed to enter the transit lane. Now, there's also going to be some supplemental signs, as you can see in the graphic here, that tells you that you're also allowed to enter. And that sign's going to say right lane, buses, bikes, and right turns only. Now, as I mentioned before, the bus only lane is not to be used to ride in for multiple blocks. Now, you can also look at the animation in the middle, and you'll see that it says that drivers should enter the dedicated bus lane about 100 feet before making the right turn. So the right turn entry points are different depending on how much traffic there is, and so they vary. But there is no special indication when there are driveways or business accesses. And in that case, you should use that 100-foot rule there that you see on your screen. And Lori, can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, I'd like to point out that this is nothing new. You've seen bus lanes throughout our community here in DC and Baltimore. And of course, you've heard about them all throughout the nation. We're not the first. These are a couple of successful projects that have been implemented, and you possibly have experienced as a user as well. You'll see that there's some differences in them. On the top picture, you see that it's next to the curb lane. In the middle picture, that's in Baltimore, you'll see that there's lanes between the bus lane and the car and the parking lanes. And then you'll see also in DC that sometimes they use flexible posts, sometimes they don't. And bikes do operate in these bus lanes throughout the region. So that's it for me. Gary, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Keith. The region, as Keith said, the region does recognize the importance of prioritizing bus movements to provide safe and reliable service, to bring back riders from COVID, and to build ridership to support equity and climate goals of both the county and the region. Dedicated bus lanes have successfully been implemented across the country and the world, resulting in improved transit travel times. In Montgomery County and Prince George's County, WMATA Metro is coordinating with each county and Maryland DOT State Highway to introduce 2 dedicated bus lanes with 1 in each county. In Montgomery County, the project is a 1-mile segment along Georgia Avenue between Wayne Avenue and downtown Silver Spring and 16th Street, that's shown on the left picture on the screen. The overall concept design is very similar to University Boulevard dedicated bus lane. It's important to try to use the same concept design so that drivers, particularly in the same vicinity, can understand and be educated on what the paint symbols mean and the signs mean. Also, WMATA is advancing a similar project in Silver Hill Road in Suitland in Prince George's County. Those projects by WMATA have been submitted for FTA funding under the RAISE grant. So what are the project benefits? The dedicated bus lane along University Boulevard is one of that is only involves paint and signage and does not change the travel patterns or turn movements. The project can be implemented in only a couple of weeks with limited impact, meaning signs and paint and maybe some signal improvements and changes that are needed. The benefits are significant with improved traffic travel times, transit travel times, and improved reliability of a very important route, the C2C4, again, which I said is the highest ridership route in the Metro bus system in Maryland. It may very well be one of the top 5 ridership routes in the whole region, including DC, and for 3 ride-on routes with over 9,000, combined with over 9,000 daily riders. Dedicated bus lane will make bus travel to Wheaton and Silver Spring Red Line stations more reliable, to improve opportunities to connect with other transit options, including Metro Rail and local regional bus service. As you know, both Wheaton and Silver Spring are major hubs for transit connections. We do not expect any major adverse impact to motorists. Bicyclists and emergency vehicles should find benefit in using the dedicated transit lane as well. So going to the project schedule. Project, as we said, is completing concept planning and is obtaining important public feedback through this meeting, pop-up events that we've had, and the online survey, which we ask you to look at and complete if you haven't done so. We hope to review these important comments and coordinate with our partners of MDOT State Highway and WMATA to finalize the design and look forward to summer-fall implementation. The pilot will be monitored and an evaluation will be prepared. The team will be observing operations and will make adjustments as needed to minimize impacts and improve on bus performance. Next slide, please. Oh, I guess I should go over, I'm sorry, go back. I'm sorry if you don't mind. I think I did talk about one thing. The one thing I'd like to add, though, I think is really pretty important, that we see prior to construction start, which might be as early as sometime this summer, and going through construction and beyond, we need to have a formal public education and outreach program. So part of our program is to produce materials to educate the public on what the red paint means, what the skip lines mean, what the signage means, so that we have an educated public that knows how to use the lanes safely. And also to work on a regional system because of the other lanes, both in Prince George's County and Montgomery County, for riders and drivers that need that same education base. Thank you. Another major component of the pilot program and other dedicated bus lane projects will be, as I said, the continuous public education that we need to develop and start this summer. We've done a lot of public outreach and some education to date with the email blasts, the media posts, project website, bus stop bulletins. We distributed material to residential buildings and the businesses, pop-up street teams at the metro station, bus stops, and shopping centers. This will continue as we advance the project to continue to get public input into the process. Next slide. Thank you. So tell us what you think. We'd like to hear from you many different ways. If you have questions and comments, tonight is an opportunity to make those comments, and hopefully there's enough people of staff that can comment appropriately, or that we will get back, we'll back in touch and post answers to questions that we don't get to tonight. You can stay connected by requesting a community meeting. We're willing to go into the community to work with homeowners associations, other groups, perhaps building associations, to talk about the project, to help understand the benefits, and to acknowledge that there may be some changes the way people travel in the corridor, but we believe it's all for the benefit of the public and transit users. So we ask you to look out for future public meetings and attend them if you can. We will also be posting this video online as early as tomorrow on our website. And you may contact me at gary.aaronrich@montgomerycountymd.gov, and we will also post this presentation as well. Next slide. So we're now taking questions, and I'll turn it back to Lori and the team to name the people that are next in line to ask questions, so we can unmute you.
Okay, first of all, we have a question from Joel Nathan.
Okay, Joel.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So if I understand correctly, when you make a right-hand turn onto University Boulevard, you have to immediately get into the center of the left lane. You won't be allowed any time or any space to be in the right lane and then safely merge over. Is that correct?
Well, you need to safely merge. So, we don't have a direct number of feet that you can go, but we're looking for people to merge over as safely as they can, as soon as they can safely. We don't want unsafe merges. We also want, though, the driver to recognize that it's a little different than it is today, but we're trying to maintain that movement and trying to do it as safe as possible.
Okay, so you will be allowed a reasonable distance.
Yes.
Before you have to merge over. Okay.
Yes, I think the traffic engineers will take a look at that once we go further into design and look at operations. At some point, there may be some symbol or sign that indicates when you're expected to be in the regular traffic lane.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we'll hear from Jeff Paretsky.
Good afternoon. I have a question on bus driver training. I
Yeah.
used to take that route regularly when I wasn't working from home full time, and the speed limit, while lowered, numerically doesn't actually affect the actual speed. Buses do run at excessive speed on that road, and there are plenty of, at least two, I'll say, places where there are equivalent of blind corners where they're coming along at speed. Are there plans to work with WMATA and Ride-On for remedial training for the bus drivers to understand that they have to follow the speed limits also?
And the answer is definitely yes. The bus drivers also need to know what the red paint means, and to know what the signs mean, and how to operate safely in the bus lane. When they can get out of the bus lane, and how they can get back into the bus lane safely. If there's a stopped vehicle or garbage truck or whatever, might very well be in that lane. So I think training is going to be very important. Speed is important to the extent that we can work with WMATA and the supervisors, the route supervisors. It is possible we can clock the speeds. I will also tell you one thing that you may not know. WMATA is definitely a leader in terms of what technology is on the buses. Montgomery County Ride-On is trying to catch up, but they know every bus. They know the speed of every bus. They know the delay on every bus. They know more information than you could possibly want. And that's how we got the information on the delay and the congestion from a major database from every route and every bus that rode on University Boulevard in the time frame that we were asking for. So we have a way of going back and looking at the detailed bus operations data, which we will as part of an evaluation. We want to see if the bus speeds have increased. We want to see if there's more reliability and less variability in travel time. And so those are things that we're going to continue to work with Metro to get that information. The information on Ride-On is a little more difficult. We're not quite as sophisticated in the databases and all the data that's on the bus. So
Thank you. I look forward to being able to safely bike to downtown Wheaton for lunch.
yeah, we'd like you to do that as well.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Next, we'll hear from Christopher Broom.
Good afternoon. I'd like to take a moment to voice my support for this program. I do have a question of what kind of enforcement will we be seeing, looking at cars that are entering this lane?
Okay.
And
that's a really, really good question. And we've been talking about it and thinking about it for some time. And I don't know whether there's a delegate on or not. I thought there may have been one that signed up. I haven't been able to go through the list of attendees. But I will tell you, there is a bill in the state legislature this year that unfortunately did not move forward. And it was a bill that would give Montgomery County the ability to photo enforce the bus lanes. So that would be a very, very important item to have. Baltimore got that approval in the last session for their bus lanes. And of course, WMATA and Montgomery County very much would like to have that privilege as well. There are some other things that we can do. One of the things that we're proposing to do in anticipation of the pilot is to video ourselves the amount of traffic in the right lane in certain segments to see whether there is to see whether the red paint is helping to enforce, and the signs enforce use in certain segments of the corridor. Obviously, we don't do that at red right turns or major driveways, but if we can get a database of the existing condition, we then might know how well enforcement is going, self-enforcement is going. It is possible that because of the signage, and that's another reason you see the signage as often as possible, that the police can enforce not compliance with signage. So even though it may be more difficult to get enforcement on bus lanes, if it is observed and that's a continued problem, then we would have to go a step further and look into that matter. But again, that's also part of the pilot. And that may be very important to next year going back to the state legislature and saying, hey, this is what we found. And this is why we need the ability to have photo enforcement.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Next, we'll hear from Debbie Brown. I think- There we go.
All right, can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
All right, there we go. Okay. I'm want to know about how this affects pedestrians crossing these intersections where the bus lane is, catching the bus or otherwise crossing a street.
Well, I might let Keith answer that. We also have Mark Terry from Montgomery County Department of Transportation, Traffic Engineering. So perhaps one of those two might be able to better address your question.
Yeah, it really actually has no changes. The bus only lane is still a travel lane. It just has a preferential use for a certain type of vehicles. So it's a pretty simple answer.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Carol Silverman.
Is she able to get on?
There she is, yeah. She's unmuted. Carol, you're unmuted. Can you speak? Okay, we will circle back to Carol. And next hear from Barry Graham.
Hello, can you hear me?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to comment on this. I drive this route every day, along with others that do carpools to and from Kent Mill and who drive to Wheaton. Most of the people I've discussed this with disagree with many of the points made here. The bike lanes were not successful. They were very unpopular, not only because of the blocking of one lane on Arcola, which you said it's not going to happen this time, but also because of trying to squeeze 3 lanes into 2. They please a small minority of the small number of bikers that were actually observed using the lanes. And the support on this call is not indicative of how a large number of residents feel. There's no bus traffic congestion issue on University Boulevard at the moment, other than at Northwood School at the start and end of the school day, which this isn't going to fix because it's on where it's going to be the bus lane. And also possibly at Arcola, caused by the traffic backing up onto University, caused by the narrowing of Arcola a few years ago. 1 bus every 6 minutes is not a reason to close a lane to cars and to squeeze 3 lanes into 2, which will actually cause the congestion that you're talking about, that you say will help. It just seemed like it's a backdoor attempt to reintroduce the bus lanes, which were very unpopular. There was no outreach, despite what you say. People like me had not heard of this until it was publicized a few days ago, and we're not very happy about this. And this is just another way that the life in Montgomery County and in Silver Spring is being made to be very uncomfortable and unpleasant.
Well, thank you for your comment. We want to continue to work with you and others to see if we can address individual issues and concerns. So as the process moves forward, we're very much interested in having a dialogue to talk about what the issues are. And if there's anything that we can do or any data that we can produce, we'd very much like to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Actually, Carol wrote me in the chat stating that she was having trouble being heard. She would like to know, why haven't you had direct mailing to the residents in the communities that are being impacted?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, we've had many outreach opportunities. And if you feel that there is a group of people that we are not reaching, we want to reach them. So if you could, talk to us after this meeting and let us know which communities you feel are not being giving proper notice of this meeting. We very much would like to have more meetings. So thank you for the comment, and our intention is certainly to be more inclusive and to meet with groups and individuals that have concerns or suggestions.
Okay, next we have a question from Esther Baldinger.
Hello.
Hi.
So I have two questions about going west on University Boulevard at Arcola. My first question is that right now, the right lane, which is a right turn only lane except for buses, will it change so that bikes can also go straight through that intersection, or will they have to turn right?
Keith, can you answer that as well?
Yeah, bikes will be able to go straight through.
So my concern there is now we're introducing another, I think, hazard in terms of the cars coming down from Arcola and turning right, because you're going to have to maneuver through that bus lane to get over, and you're going to have to really watch out for those bikers. And my concern is for the safety of the bikers who are now going to be able to go straight, even though cars cannot.
That's actually not a change from the current condition. Bikers can still go straight through.
A biker can go straight through, but a car cannot.
Yeah, today a biker can go straight through.
I see. It says buses only, but I didn't know that. And my second question is, how do you have these broken red lines in the right lane for turning right onto Arcola, and how far back does that go? Because University Boulevard at many times of the day is very backed up with people trying to turn right onto Arcola. And if it's a short distance, what we're going to find is people are going to have to try to merge in a lane that's already backed up, and it's going to back up that second lane that's trying to go straight. So are you allowing a long distance in that particular right lane for cars to turn right?
Yeah, the preliminary plans that we've drawn up are based on some of the traffic modeling that SHA did. That's the State Highway Administration, and it's about 350 feet. And so that's almost to the Northwood High School entrance. So it's almost the full block.
Okay, and those are going to be broken.
Yeah, it's going to be broken for that 350 feet, plus or minus, almost all the way between Arcola and the Northwood High School, the driveway there.
Okay, so that's good to hear.
And I would like to just state that that's part of the observation that we do once we open the project and see how it's used. I mean, we have some ability to modify things so that operations work better.
Okay, next we'll hear from David Bequee.
Hi, my name is David Bachwies, and I live on University Boulevard. My question is specifically with regard to the intersection of Amherst and University. If I understood Mr. Ehrenrich correctly, one of the intentions behind this dedicated bus lane was to improve connection to Wheaton Metro Station. But if I followed the map correctly, the bus lane would terminate at Amherst, not at Wheaton Metro Station. Is that correct?
That's correct for now. And again, we picked the segment that we felt could be implemented relatively quickly and have some immediate benefit. You are correct. The best connection would be directly to get to Wheaton. And then also look at what happens between Wheaton and Silver Spring. But we're not quite there, and that would be a follow-on good project.
Well, as somebody who lives in that neighborhood, I have a preference to see a bus stop right there at Amherst and University. If I followed the bus stops along your map, the bus stop closest to that would be far away from it.
Well, why don't we look at re-examining the map and the bus stops? We have people that will also look at the bus stops, and that's part of the input we're looking for right now from the public. Issues of where buses are, bus stops, and some operational considerations that we need to consider.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Allison.
Hi. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
Okay. I sent a number of questions to the chat, I'm sure before many people did, and none of them were read. I sent them to you, Lori, because you were listed as the host. Okay.
Yes.
Like I said, none of them have been asked, and I believe I probably sent questions before many people raised their hand. But I just want to comment quickly, and I would like them asked. But I just want to comment quickly. When you said it's only going to go back 350 feet, that's what SHA said to Northwood. Currently, if I don't get into that right lane way before Kennington, by University Shomray, and that's only because of that stupid because of the stupid traffic cone that for some reason has been sitting in the right lane over some messed up sewer line for years, since way before the pandemic, which makes the right lane in that one spot impossible to drive in for anybody. I generally can't get into Arcola safely because there are so many cars trying to get into Arcola. Like when I had my youngest at Karasik on Kenbrook, or Kafik, that's what they call it now. I would watch cars back up past Caddington to turn right onto Arcola. And I was thankful that I was turning from Caddington on so I could avoid a lot of that traffic. And even now it backs up way past Northwood a good chunk of the time. So I don't really know what SHA is thinking there. And I mean, I think it kind of like loses the purpose of making that a right lane for buses unless you're trying to kill people in vehicles. The other thing I do want to also say really fast, because I've been asking for this for 16 years now and no proposal has ever had it. And it's the one thing that will actually make universities safer for people. Well, there's two things. One is ticketing jaywalkers. We'll probably start ending the problem of jaywalkers. Second, there needs to be the bus stop that's across on going University Boulevard West eastbound, across from the entrance to the Warwick and the Towers, needs to be reinstated, and there needs to be a pedestrian operated traffic signal with a crosswalk going from the near the entrance to the Warwick and the Towers across University Boulevard, so that people who are disabled and elderly can safely take the C2 and the C4 home to their apartments, which is not an option right now because the Ride on 8 bus is insanely infrequent. So, and it's not for somebody who works long hours. It only operates every 30 minutes during rush hours, and it operates every 40 to 45 minutes other times of the day. It doesn't start till after 6 in the morning. It ends at 8 o'clock at night. And that's it. People are like totally stuck on it. And now people who commute from those buildings, and they're coming back from Wheaton, they have to get off at Side Creek Parkway and walk effectively 3 blocks home, which is crazy. And no proposal has ever had this.
Well, I think we can take a look at that.
Well, I've been waiting for it to be taken a look at. I've been asking for 16 years, every single time there's been one of these things. And I used to live in those buildings when I was legally blind, and I was stuck having to cross University Boulevard, not being able to see anything because I couldn't safely walk myself from Side Creek Parkway back to my apartment. And I've been asking for this to make it safer. So you want to make it safer for people, that will number one, make it safer for people, make it safer for bicyclists, it'll make it safer for pedestrians, it'll make it safer for buses, it'll make it safer for cars.
Thank you, Allison. Let's try to keep our conversation, however, focused on the project at hand.
Okay, because this project is never done.
You can contact us after the meeting and we'll be happy to discuss it with you.
I've asked at least 15 or 20 people between the county and council members and everything else.
Hey,
Okay,
Lori.
Yes.
Hey, I don't know if people can post questions that they post direct chats, I think, to the co-hosts. Is that true?
I'm sorry. What was your
I
question?
got some questions posed directly to me in the chat. Can you see them
Yes,
as well?
I cannot see them.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me
So the
copy.
reason we ask everybody to send the questions to me, my name is Lori Main, is because I'm the host. And so we will go through the hands raised and take questions. And then if we have time, we'll go to the top of the chat and we'll begin reading those questions. However, if we run out of time before we get all of the questions in the chat asked or answered, we will then answer them in the coming days via email or telephone call. So, so we want all of the chat messages to come to me because after the meeting ends, only those chat messages saves with the recording. So, all right, so let's move on and hear from Daniel Treadwell.
Hi, I'm a former city bus driver and I'm retired from the federal government, and I go out on bicycle every day, weather permitting, all over Montgomery County, PG County. And I've studied this proposal and I really don't think it's safe for bicyclists. And I also fail to see how the inclusion of bicycles in the equation helps facilitate faster transit service. And in fact, I would expect the opposite to be the case. The bicycles would slow up the buses and also the fire trucks, the ambulances, and the police cars. And I would certainly not consider it to be a safe bicycling option. And also, it impacts the bus drivers because, for example, the hill between Sligo Parkway and Inwood is going to slow bicycles to a little bit better than walking speed, 4 or 5 miles an hour. So the buses are going to obviously want to change lanes. And so there's more opportunity for accidents and collisions. And a bicyclist weighs approximately 150 to 200 pounds total versus a 25,000 pound bus or a fire truck. So do the math. And the folks on University Boulevard, many of them are going 35, 40, 45, or even faster. So there's a lot of alternative side streets. For example, Franwell, Blue Ridge, Sligo Creek Parkway, Inwood, Dennis. So I just can't see the, the benefit of including bicycles in this equation when there are so many safer options for a bicyclist to use. And I don't see the time saving to be significant for the buses. And if you include the bikes in the equation, they're only going to slow up the buses. So I'd like to hear any comments you have on that. I just don't, I don't know what your projections are for how many seconds or minutes specifically the bus lane is projected to save between Dennis and Amherst, but I wouldn't expect it to be of any significance, maybe a minute, 2 minutes. Is it worth all this effort and the risk? Would you want your children to ride their bicycle in the bus lane? I just don't think it's safe, not at the speeds that are on University Boulevard. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I think that's a very good point, Daniel, and we appreciate it. But I think one of the basic points that I think we made earlier is that bicyclists today can use any lane on University Boulevard. As you know, they're not restricted. It is a public street and bicyclists can operate in those lanes. And you are correct. If there are alternatives and side streets, that would be the preference of bicyclists who know where they're going to use. So it is not a requirement that bicyclists use that street. It's just that where else would they be if they're on that street anyway? Would you want them to be in that middle lane where there are more cars? Or would you want them to be in a lane with only 15 buses an hour? And so I think that that's the choice, but the choice is always the bicyclist's choice and the availability of the network and choices that they have. But I think that's something we have to always keep into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a question from Carol Silvermet.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes, Carol.
Okay, well, we have several questions, so I'm not sure which one. My husband and I am both writing the questions, so I'm not sure which
Okay.
question you're looking at.
Well, you can go ahead and pose your questions, and then, you know, we can skip over them if we get to them in the chat.
Okay, you wrote on your slide that the success of the bike lane pilot contributed to this plan, but it was not successful and it was rescinded. Yet you wrote it was successful. I'm confused. Sligo Creek Parkway was closed for bicyclists. And not only do they have on the weekends, not only do they have that, they have access to Sligo Creek and they have the paths. So that was already determined in a study. And I'm not sure why you said it was a success. It wasn't for bikes, and that's why it didn't go through.
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know whether there is anybody on that can answer that from
Hey, Gary, I can.
Yes,
would you like me
Keith,
to
go
pitch
ahead.
in? Yeah, we were involved in the bike only lane project as well. And I think, Carol, you said that it was rescinded, and you know, I think you're equating with the removal of the project with unsuccessful, but it was always planned to be removed. It was a pilot project. It was never intended to be a permanent project. And so I don't think you can say it was unsuccessful because it was removed. In fact, when we did the before and after study, we had considered it as a success.
Why wasn't that reported at the meeting? Because there were meetings about it. So we as the people, the residents here, were not given that information. And I think, you know, getting back to my original question, there needs to be direct communication with the residents. The residents are not being advised of this, and it's directly impacting our daily lives. The other question we had is,
Yeah,
how
Carol, I
many
can
of the
respond to
local
your,
riders?
question about the lack of information to the residents. I mean, I do know that we had always told the community that it was going to be a pilot project. This is the bike on lane project. And I mean, I can't remember exactly everybody was in every meeting, but that was a pretty consistent message. Apologies if you didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Well, we should move on from that project. It does not necessarily involve Montgomery County DOT per se, but we have the advantage of some background from that project and the analysis of that project to help us guide us with respect to traffic flow and traffic issues. So it has been helpful, at least having done that analysis, for us to take advantage of.
The other thing is, how many of local residents use the buses that you were talking about that's going to impact our daily lives?
Well, we're in a regional system, you know, and routes, that is a regional route. It is, as I had mentioned, and I think everybody on the call knows, it is a well-used route, and it is used by people that are going through to one of the Metro Rail stations or to other destinations. and does serve very well the people along University Boulevard. In terms of origins and destinations, I don't have that information, but we are part of a regional network, and University Boulevard is a major corridor. And that's why the planning department is also looking at the University Boulevard corridor as well, because of its importance as a corridor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, next we have Sanjita Rangwala.
Hi. Yes, I'm a resident of the area. I am a resident of the.
Oh.
I think we lost you.
Yes,
Yeah,
it said that you muted me.
I'm sorry.
I'm a resident of the area, and I'm one of the many residents who did use those bike lanes. I used them like multiple times a week when they were there. A lot of times with my small child in a trailer in the back. And I also am a resident who uses the buses and gets on the buses here, for those who have been curious about this. And I, along both pre-pandemic and now post-pandemic, and along with many other bus riders, but I'm sure that who live in the area, but I'm sure that you can find the actual stats for that. But I do have a comment about and concerns about this particular pilot project, because I think that this is a stretch of University Boulevard that doesn't have a lot of traffic, so I don't feel like the buses are actually slowed down much along this stretch. And you keep saying that bicyclists can use all the lanes on the road, and that may be the law, but you'll notice nobody does, because the traffic is very fast and very aggressive. And so I feel like without any sort of even flex post separation from the non-bus traffic, it's not going to be safe for bicyclists. You're not going to see bicyclists using this. So I would not be concerned at all about bicyclists slowing down the buses along this corridor. What I am concerned about is enforcement of the bus lanes, because I don't see drivers following traffic rules very often around here.
Well, I appreciate your concern about the enforcement. That's obviously one that we have to monitor and see how we can enforce even without the ability to use cameras.
Okay, next we'll hear from Steve Solomon.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Gary. I've attended a couple of the meetings with the planning people about the University Boulevard corridor plan. So I'm wondering how they'll be working with you and specifically the data on this project. I know you said there'll be a 12-month evaluation period. And what kind of metrics will you be looking at while it's going on and immediately after in terms of ride time, traffic congestion, et cetera, to see if if it is indeed a pilot program and could stay or not? What data will you be looking at to evaluate that afterwards, and how will you be working with planning? I saw Nkosi and Alex, and I believe others from the planning on here, to inform their future plan for the corridor plan.
Well, that's a great question, Stephen. Thank you for your participation in both our study and the planning department's corridor study. We have a close relationship with the planning department and the planning work. I was trying to indicate earlier that the timeframes of what we're doing are short term, hopefully something that can be done within a year, and we can see how it works. And what the planning department is doing, and they're on, and if they'd like to speak, they're welcome to. Lori, we can give them the opportunity as well. They're looking at a 20 or 20-year plus future where the cross section, which means the right of way along University Boulevard, could very well change to include different lane configurations, bus lanes, and bike facilities as well. So we're kind of an early test to see how important the buses and bikes can fit into the corridor. On the longer term, I think it's really important that the planning department's work move forward, because really the issue of what we do outside of the curbs is I think very critical. So we are going to work closely together. Your other question about the metrics, I talked about some of them. I mean, clearly, the average bus speed, the congestion delay. We can look at reliability. Some of the most important things are reliability. You know, is it a 30-minute trip all the time? Is the bus getting there on time? And those are things that we can measure. In terms of ridership, that can be measured. And in terms of the opinions of the public, in terms of liking the improvement, Metro calculates and Metro collects information, public opinions, and we might be able to piggyback on that and also do other survey work during the course of the pilot. So hopefully we'll have some metrics, and hopefully we'll have some survey work as well.
And Gary, I'll just add to there's metrics and say we're looking at the bus metrics, but also the car metrics as well. We want to understand the before and after differences between both. And then I think you already mentioned the compliance issue. We're monitoring that as well.
Lori, back to you.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from Barbara Marcus.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think I probably, my husband is not here, but I'm going to speak for him because his observation of this, he drove out to College Park as an archivist for 20 years. So he was very familiar with this corridor going out to University Boulevard. And his observation was that if there's the congestion, bus congestion is not, as Sanjita said, is not in this pilot project area. It's farther east, mostly, Four Corners, and I think there's at least a couple of other intersections farther east where there's real bus congestion, where there's congestion of traffic. So it is a mystery to many of us in this area as to why this section is again being used as the pilot project. When I can't see that, that the metrics really are there that are going to give you an honest appraisal of whether this is going to speed things up or not. And with all of the other concerns that we have, it just seems something that we just can't understand.
Well, that's a good point. I had some numbers in the presentation that there is, the unreliability of the route, and the congestion, I think, was 19% delays caused by congestion. We have those details. But I want to point out, though, that one of the things that we found, and in discussing with Maryland DOT State Highway Administration, is that there's enough capacity on University Boulevard. 4 lanes provides enough capacity for that road. 6 lanes just encourages speed, perhaps accidents, makes it more difficult in many other areas. So I think that the segment is important because it's one of the few segments that we can actually consider making a travel lane, a bus lane, without significant traffic impacts. And that is something that's already been studied and modeled by State Highway Administration and will continue to be monitored as we advance the bus lane project and throughout the project. So if it turns out that we're wrong and that there is traffic impacts and the delays are noticeable, then I think we would have to respond.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from Christopher Vroom.
Hi, I followed your previous project with the bike lanes very closely, and while I was very supportive of it, I felt like the biggest flaw of the bike lane project is that it kind of just arbitrarily began and ended. It didn't really connect any meaningful locations. And while this pilot program is a noticeable step up in that it extends all the way to Wheaton, I'm confused why it ends at Dennis. I agree with the previous poster, though I think for the opposite reason. It should be extended much further, perhaps to at least Four Corners and maybe even further in order to gauge the real effectiveness of this program. Because ultimately, what's the point of a transit corridor if it doesn't connect to actual destinations?
Well, I think that's a good point, although this is a corridor that we have noticed that there could be reliability improvements and travel time improvements. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't, it's kind of in the middle. And those are the sorts of things. You start there and you see how well that works. And you at the same time work to see how it can be extended if and when it.
This was one of the problems with the bike lane is that it didn't go anywhere. So people used it recreationally, but it was meaningless as an actual transit corridor. And then people pointed to the fact that people were not using full length trips in order to travel between destinations as a point of its failure when it was set up for failure. There's almost a perception among people advocating for better bike lanes, advocating for better transit infrastructure, that these programs are intentionally kind of set up for failure with poor planning. And if you're not going to actually connect two actual points, like, you're just going to create a program that's going to be like, it's going to be a little bit better. It's going to help some people, but it's not going to have the success it could be because you've hamstrung it by not extending it by looking at the map right now, 0.7 of a mile.
Well, I get your point, and I take it as a very good comment. One of the problems that we have, or the constraint that we have, is that we have to work within the curbs. And so when you start talking about going into Four Corners, that is a whole study. That is a more complicated exercise that probably would not
But
be
this is a continuation of frustration where the studies only need to be made when it's pro pedestrian, pro public transportation, pro bicyclist. There's always study, there's always things. You build roads all the time, you widen roads all the time, you redirect car traffic all the time. None of this happens every time there's a road built. It's only when tiny amounts of road surface, tiny quantities of lane miles are dedicated to non-motorists.
Well, your point's well taken. I will also say that if you look at the map, if you look at bus lanes elsewhere, 2.1 miles may be the longest bus lane in the region. If you look at what else is in place, so it is a very sizable and substantial piece. Yes, its connections could be better and should be better, and we have to work on that. We have a project. The MCDOT has a project, on the 29, looking through four corners. And looking at how we can make improvements there for buses. And we also are doing work in Wheaton as well. But I think that to get something in and to see those benefits sooner than later, I think has some merit. And that's what our recommendation is right now. If it turns out that based on comments and public comments and other concerns that it's better not to do anything than to have something in the middle, although there would be benefits, that'd be an issue that we'd have to consider. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next we'll hear from Carol Silvermetz.
Hi, so we were wondering whether it can be used for high occupancy cars, for carpool lanes. Because that would help the community in which we live. And if you could use technology that when the buses aren't going, that anyone can travel on that lane.
Well, those are good points. I think with the HOV, well, I don't think we're quite set up to do that. We don't have the technology, the Easy Pass technology. We don't want to toll it for sure. So I don't think that is a particular issue. But it's something worth putting on the discussion topic list. The issue of the hours of the day, that's also might make some sense to discuss. The pavement markings and the signs, but obviously the pavement marking would remain the same. But the signs might be different. And those are things that we'd have to consider.
Thank you.
Okay, and does Mr. Silvermetz have a question?
No, Mr. Silvermetz is fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next, we have Allison.
Hi, it's me again.
Yes.
I just quickly on what Carol just said, I just want to mention it's a great idea for high occupancy vehicles. I mean, like for our purposes in the morning, our car has 4 kids in it, and every day, and usually almost 4 kids home. And in the on Friday afternoons, our car has 7 children in it. And not all the schools in the area have busing options. So it's kind of unfair to the schools that don't have buses if you're taking a lane away from us, or free buses. Second, going on what Steve Solomon said, Gary, you said there's going to be a survey. So out of curiosity, when is the survey to measure traffic currently being taken or speeds on the roadway being taken?
I'll let Keith talk about that, but I believe the data has already been collected with MDOT.
Correct. So while Northwood High School is open, you did that data. So you're going to compare it to traffic flow. I'm not done. I'm not done. You're going to compare it to when traffic flow is going on when Northwood is closed. So you're going to have an easy, we're better. And that's unfair because you chose this bike pilot in this area because Northwood High School is closed. And I just figured that out while you're talking to Barbara Marcus, Gary, with what you were saying. You're going to be measuring two pieces that are not the same. And you're going to be you're trying to implement a lane to hurt people when Northwood High School reopens. And that's unfair.
Well, Keith, why don't you answer the question?
Yeah, I think, Gary, you said that we'd already done the survey. We actually haven't done the before and after survey yet. We
haven't done the after because the after hasn't happened. So about the before. You obviously haven't done the after.
Yeah, but Allison, could you let me finish my sentence? It's getting choppy because I don't think I can respond to your question. So I think, let me restate your question. You wanted to know when we're going to do the before and after survey. And you obviously understand after hasn't occurred yet, so we haven't done that. And so I was going to tell you, we're not going to do the before survey until we're a little bit closer towards construction. So it'll be during school times. So most likely it will be in May.
Okay.
And then we will do the after studies periodically throughout the duration of the project.
When Northwood High School is closed. So you're going to have less traffic because there's no 2,000 students at Northwood High School at that time.
No, I didn't say that.
You just said you're doing the before in May when Northwood High School is open, and you're going to be doing the after during the bike lane pilot when Northwood High School is closed for construction.
No, I just said we were going to do it periodically during the duration of the project.
Yes, and the project is solely while Northwood High School is closed.
Well, we'll have to address that question. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention.
Well, it's just like you guys tried. You haven't released the 2021 bike lane pilot crash data on the websites. And but it's on the MCPD website, and it shows that there were more accidents and more pedestrian accidents during the bike lane pilot in 2021 than the same period in 2020.
We're not talking about the bike lane pilot right now, though.
I understand, but when we're looking at data, I do data. It's my job.
I understand.
I don't think you do, but it is my job.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Next, we have Lynn F.
Thank you and good evening. I live directly off of University Boulevard West, and the residents on my street, this truly impacts us, just like the bike lanes did during the pilot. And I want to ask, there are many times during rush hour that, to be in the right-hand lane and to turn directly off of University Boulevard, You need to get pretty far back, more than 350 feet, more than whatever was stated earlier in terms of taking a right onto Arcola in front of Northwood. So the same goes for our street. Many homes on the street, many residences, many residents, many cars. And my question is, you said there's going to be some type of police or cameras or some type of surveillance. Don't want to get a ticket just trying to come home, every day. And my question is, I want to make sure that there is plenty, that there are, first of all, those of us that live off the street aren't going to get a ticket to try to come home every day. That's
That's an easy one. That's an easy one to answer. I may have misspoke, or maybe you didn't understand. The Montgomery County does not have the authority right now, today, this year, to photo enforce a bus lane. So there wouldn't be like a speed camera or a red light camera in operation. So you would not be getting automatic tickets for using the lane. The lane hopefully would be self-enforced with the red paint. And if that doesn't happen, then we would have to work with the authorities to find a way of improving and stepping up enforcement.
Thank you. And I have part B to this question is taking a right off of Arcola again onto University. I understand we can, that is the bus lane and bicycle lane as well. How far, University Towers is right there, but there are plenty of people that continue to go straight. How far will you allow cars to continue to go straight in that lane before it turns red, or is it red the whole time? In terms of the paint and the enforcement, again, because it will back up on Arcola just like it did previously during the bike pilot plan, and that is because to turn right, the middle two lanes turn left, and it can get quite backed up on Arcola to take a right. And so losing that lane could be very problematic again.
Hey, Gary, would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please, Keith.
Yeah. I guess the first answer is, Lynn, that entire lane will be painted solid red, not the broken skips like I showed you in one of the photos. And so you're asked, how long can I travel in that lane? What's permissible? The general idea is that we don't want vehicles to travel in that lane, but we don't want it to be unsafe. And so, we would like you to come to a yield condition and cross over the red lane. But if you feel that you need to travel in the lane for some short distance, be safe, then by all means do so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, so it is 7:28 p.m. We have our time is up at 7:30, so we'll take one more question and then close the evening. Carol Silvermetz.
Thank you. So I just want to piggyback on two things that are related to the Kent Mill community. One is that when you make the right lane off of Arcola onto University, people do carpools to pick other people up at the University Towers and at the Warwick. And that whole stretch, they can't get out of that lane to go back in to make a right. So I think that everyone has a concern that we've already had 4 speed cameras, and in a year from now, will the county start saying, oh, you were in the lane too long, when they really needed to make another right? So in other words, it's a right from Arcola and then a right into
University Towers.
Yeah.
I think that's a useful point, and we'll take a look at that.
Thank you. I appreciate your openness to this.
Well, I mean, that's why we're having the meeting, right? We're having the meeting because we want to get, the team wants to get your input. That doesn't mean we're going to satisfy all of your concerns. We'll try to, and be able to respond to them all. But we'll see what we can do, what options we have. I want to make sure before we dismiss tonight that we did have a person from Delegate Von Stewart's office, Susan, with us, and I don't know if there's been any public officials that have stated in the chat, but I wanted to make sure that that was available. I also want to say, if you go back, can you go back to the slide that has the survey? Maybe you're on it. I'm just
Sure.
showing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a couple ways for continued information to us on a regular basis. Take the survey. We've already had more than 150 respondents, and based on the outreach that we've previously done prior to today. So use the QR code. You may also go on, if you have good eyes, go on to montgomerycounty.md.gov/DOT/project/bus priority University Boulevard. It's a website for the project, and there is the opportunity to put additional comments in, and we will try to respond on a regular basis. That will also be the site where we will put the video of today's meeting. And we will also continue to look at other ways for outreach. There's been some suggestions that we need to do some more outreach. We're open to work with community groups. So if there are community groups that we have not dealt with or have not reached, but there's someone in the meeting today that knows about that, please let that group know, and please request an opportunity. We have some time that we can still provide and receive input on the project.
Gary, I've had my hand up for a while. There are folks that had asked multiple questions, and I just wanted to ask one question, but I wasn't given that opportunity. I was wondering if you might have 30 seconds to hear my question.
Sure.
So I appreciate your time tonight and everyone being here. I wanted to say that I live in Kent Mill. I drive on University Boulevard every day to commute to work 5 days a week. I took public transit for 5 years from Montgomery County down to PG County. So I'm very familiar with some of the challenges of taking a bus in the metro. I would just say that if you look at University Boulevard, if you look at the users and the frequency of buses compared to vehicles outnumber the bus maybe 100 to 1. I mean, your data might show something around that ballpark. So, I mean, the road is primarily designed for primarily used by vehicular traffic. And I think it's more of an ideological comment, but if the buses are always late, the schedule has to be adjusted. I kind of knew what it would take for me door to door to get from home to work, and I planned for that. If the bus is always late, then the schedule is not, reflecting that reality, and it should be updated to reflect that. I think, carving out potentially a lane from the road for buses to the exclusion of vehicles or private vehicles, ideologically, I don't agree with that. Again, just because if you look at the usage of the road and how many people are using it in cars, it just seems that it should favor them over buses.
Thank you for your comment. I'm sorry you had to wait so long to make it. Our analysis has indicated that there is the capacity available, and having an extra wide street is not particularly useful or helpful. I know the Arcola issue is a very important one. We'll have to solve it. We'll solve it, but come up with good recommendations. We know it's very important. That's very clear. But the issue is a street that's too wide, and the problems of a street that's too wide. So I think that that goes back to what the planning department, I think, wants to do with the University Corridor master plan study, is how we can accommodate all of the modes of transportation within this very important corridor. With that, I think we should conclude. for tonight. It's after 7:30. And I want to, again, appreciate everybody's opportunity to participate. I think we've had a good number of participants. And again, this is not the last time that you have the opportunity to comment or for us to have the opportunity to make presentations. So with that, Lori, I think we can close the recording and the session.
Thank you, Gary. Good night, everyone. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.